Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy, Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I'm back with a brand new Deku What If. What if Deku had a Puppeteer, Quirk? And as always, if you enjoy, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, make sure to leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. Make sure to show some love. First off, as y'all can tell, this is not my thumbnail. This is Mr. Crown Fiend, so if you want to go check him out, go check him out. He makes some fire content. It might not be super consistent, but it is quality and always quality. So you should check him out. I believe he'll be going pretty crazy for next year. I think he said something about 52 videos in the entirety of the year. And let's be honest, that is a lot for Mr. Crown Fiend. He hasn't done that. He hasn't been that consistent in a while. So shout out to him for doing that. I can't wait to watch his content. So if you want to keep up with him, it'll be in the description below. So shout out to Mr. Crown Fiend. And yeah, that's about it. I'm not gonna waste that much more of your time with the formalities, and we will get into what if Deku had a Puppeteer Quirk. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya was born just like any other boy. He was brought into this world, into a world though that had insane amounts of power and superpowers that were other known as quirks. Quirks was an extension of themselves. It would make others and well, yourself slightly different and have different restrictions based on the power that you were given. Some would be given super strength, but there would be backlash to the super strength, forcing your bones to crunch almost every single time you use it. Some would have fire quirks that would actually burn and serrate certain pieces of your skin. And these quirks go on for, well, hundreds, maybe even thousands of different types, some that are useful in the feat of combat, and some that are useful, well, never. Of course, though, in the normal story, Mr. Izuku Midoriya didn't have a quirk, but this time around, he does. He would be bullied and obviously taken as if he was just useless by his friend Bakugo, if you can really call him a friend. At a young age, and at a young age of about 4 to 5, he would eventually go to the doctors with his mother. The doctor would speak to him and his mother and talk to him about what the test results came back as. That these test results came back pretty interesting. There's different parts of Izuku that are actually making some sort of connection with certain objects. It's odd. It's as if his genetic makeup is actually blending without even notice, blending with different objects. The chair he sat on today is somehow building a connection with Izuku himself, as if Izuku would be able to control it. It's kind of odd. And the doctor goes on. If you look deep into the skin of Izuku's hands, it's actually different as well. It seems as if there's strings, these invisible like fabric that is sort of connecting with different objects in the room without him knowing. This is something to take into account, because after they speak on this, Izuku feels lightheaded and tired because he doesn't know how to control his quirk. While he's young, he's actually connecting to just everything around him. It's draining his stamina insane amounts and basically making him extremely exhausted. So the doctor tells his mother, Inko Midoriya, that they should keep him in a safe place. At least clear out a room that doesn't have much in it, and then there you go. You should be okay for a little bit, and he should be able to learn how to utilize this quirk and retract these so-called strings that are within his hands. He is kind of like, well, maybe a puppeteer in a way. Obviously the doctor laughs a little bit talking about it, because he doesn't know exactly what his quirk is. He just knows the little hints and different things he sees within his body, and on top of that, what's going on around him. Izuku and his mother, Inko Midoriya, would go home, and when they would arrive, she would take action to make sure that her little boy is safe, clearing out a room and making sure everything is okay. She explains to him how his quirk works, or at least to the extent that she knows, and he would begin focusing on retracting these so-called strains. He would wonder what they are. For Inko, she could barely see anything, if not, she couldn't see anything. Izuku could see it as clear as day, as if it was all connecting in one, or to every single last bit. But it's kind of odd. Very odd, in fact. She's not really understanding 100% how it works, but at the same time, well, she doesn't need to. Hopefully her little boy could eventually learn how to control being this puppeteer and utilizing this maybe to be a hero. Izuku grew up always loving All Might, so when he would watch All Might, he would think that maybe, just maybe, he can do what All Might does, but he'll be not exactly that type of hero. I mean, he'll definitely be able to do some things, but it won't be to the degree All Might does. Flattening buildings may not be in the cards for him, but he could do far more things if used properly, at least if his quirk is used properly. Izuku is passionate, and when I mean passionate about taking that next step as, well, to train, to try and become a hero. He's been told that his quirk is going to be hard to utilize, so he definitely wants to put the effort in. But when he goes to school, on the other hand, he begins to explain to, well, his classmates exactly what his quirk is. And of course, they're kind of, well, you know, they're not big believers. They think that there's no way he can actually do that. And Izuku tries to show them by moving an object in the classroom, but that doesn't really go very well. His hands begin to hurt and he can't really make a full connection with the object, and unfortunately it falls short. Everyone begins to laugh at him, calling him a freak, that he doesn't have anything. He's just trying to make up excuses and he just has nothing in his hands at all. He's trying to act like he has some magical fingers or something. No, he doesn't have anything. He's just useless, a useless Deku. And of course, he would continue to get bullied over the course of the years, but Izuku wouldn't allow this to stop him. He would continue working with his quirk, and, well, for the next 5 to 10 years, all the way up until he's basically ready to graduate middle school, he's learning how to use his quirk. And eventually, he would do just that. But during this time, he would find a love for actually making kind of dolls, but not quite. It's actually just replica figures of his favorite heroes. I mean, he would make one of All Might, he would make one of heroes like Endeavor and even Hawks. For a while, he was really just able to kind of move them around. That was kind of about it. He wasn't able to do anything crazy. He wasn't able to like make them move a bunch of their limbs and fight exactly how he would want to fight and stuff like that. He's just able to move them around and kind of throw them at people, at least for the meantime. And for a lot of years, that's kind of how it is. He'd eventually learn the little nitpicks, but it's so difficult. It's as if he really needs to use it as an extension of one's own body. But with that said, he would continue going to school, and eventually it would be time for the teacher to tell them that, well, they gotta choose what they want to do. But of course, he would end up throwing the papers in the sky, saying that he knows they all want to go the hero route, telling them all that 2 people are actually trying to go to UA. That would be Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo. But everybody would look down on Izuku. Nah, he doesn't really have a quirk. I mean, they've seen him move stuff around, but come on, that's not going to get him to UA. Izuku is completely committed, though. He's been working on his quirk, but he's going to take this next bit of time and just work as hard as he possibly can. Whatever he can do, he's going to do it. Of course, Izuku doesn't know exactly the best course of action to, expand his quirk, but still, he's going to try his best over this course of time. Katsuki would of course threaten Izuku, telling him that he shouldn't even try for UA, and so on and so forth, being the jerk he normally is. But of course Izuku doesn't back down, and he's going to try no matter what. When he heads home though, he begins to write in his journal, different ways maybe he can use his puppeteer Quirk, and continues to ride further. But what he doesn't realize is that going the long way to his home this time around is going to be the most dangerous thing he possibly could do. When he heads over under a bridge, he would eventually hear the rumblings in the sewer. Underneath this sewer, a giant sludge villain would come hurling out of it. The sludge villain would tell Izuku that he needs his body, and he would attack Izuku, immediately grabbing him and trying to basically form around him. Izuku would struggle and continue to struggle as he tries to get free. But during this time, he has a revelation. What is this sludge villain doing? Is he suffocating him or trying to control him? Izuku would think about this and would begin to have the strings in his fingertips reach out throughout the gross sludge all around him. And it would continue to circle more and more and more. But before he could even do anything, another figure would come out of the manhole cover. Immediately, a loud roar could be heard. In a way, a man is there, but it's no ordinary man. It's someone that says, "Detroit Smash!" And as that happens, it's the one and only All Might. All Might blasts the sludge villain off of Izuku, and Izuku goes flying as well. Knocked out temporarily, he would eventually wake up. All Might would be right there standing in front of him, and he would thank All Might and ask for an autograph. And he would obviously help All Might clean up the mess that was made right here. But he would ask All Might, he would go to ask him multiple questions, but unfortunately he isn't able to get the chance. All Might jumps off, but Izuku grabs onto him, wanting to ask if he could really become a hero. And when they land on a roof, eventually he's able to ask that question. Can he be a hero with a quirk he barely knows how to use? All Might doesn't know how to answer. He says that all quirks have their usabilities, but if he doesn't know how to use it, well, or at least properly, I mean, there might not be that good of a chance for him. It might be a struggle down that line. He tells him, though, that everyone finds their uses. So if he feels that he can go down the hero routes and he can somehow make it, well, nothing is stopping him. If he gets the right training and the right progression with a quirk that even is weak, a weak quirk can even become strong. All Might says this, and as he does, he shrinks down in size. Izuku freaks out, but the explanation is made and told to Izuku exactly what occurred and why this happens. Izuku would understand, but eventually he would leave. Everyone would leave, but there's a problem. The sludge villain is out of its bottle and escaped, and soon Izuku would see the aftermath of his decision. That aftermath, well, would be the sludge villain grabbing on to Katsuki Bakugo and trying to take his body. Izuku would stand there in complete and utter shock. What is he gonna do? He has to do something. He thinks. No, he can't think. He grabs his backpack and goes sprinting in, throwing the backpack straight at the eye of the sludge villain, trying to give Katsuki a breath. He begins to reach out his hands toward Katsuki. As he grabs onto Bakugo's hand, he seemingly can't get him out. The sludge villain struggles and tries to grab onto Izuku as well, and Izuku thinks he has to do exactly what the sludge villain is doing. He has to focus. He needs to connect, fully connect. He begins to reach out his hands as so much string begins to connect with the sludge villain, more than he possibly ever could in the beginning. It seems like the fight or flight reaction is coming out right now and allowing his quirk to accelerate at an insane height. He immediately would connect with the sludge villain and Bakugo would fall out. Bakugo would stand up, coughing, but he would be okay. Izuku seems linked and he's struggling. His hands are shaking and his body is quaking. It seems like he's struggling to hold on to the sludge villain. He tells Bakugo to move now. Izuku reaches back and throws his hands forward, and this allows the sludge villain to basically be pushed back at least maybe 3 to 5 meters. Izuku makes a break for it as well, and just as he does, he looks up. In the sunshine and in the gleam of light, there he was. or more like, according to him, I am here. And that is All Might. He Detroit smashes the sludge villain once again, even though he was past his time limit, destroying the sludge villain and saving everyone there. Of course, Izuku gets lectured and blah 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 and so on and so forth, but eventually he's allowed to leave. Izuku feels pretty good, actually pretty good about himself and pretty good about everything. He was able to help Bakugo. He was able to see All Might once again destroy the sludge villain, and he's at peace with that. And now this has given him the drive to work even harder, and he understands now what he needs to do. A connection with these objects. Yes, he's technically did it with a living organism, at least to a certain extent, but a connection with an object that cannot fight back because of obvious reasons. The living soul can fight back, but if he has an object and he completely manipulates it entirely, he should be able to maybe even make, well, a two-man duo. He might be able to fight alongside it in perfect sync as long as he uses his mind properly. Now this is something to think about. This is something he'll need to work on. He'll work on for as long as he needs to. Izuku is about to be home, but just as he is, someone cuts him off. It's All Might. All Might is there, and he wants to speak with young Midoriya. He speaks with him, telling him that he can do something far greater than just be a hero. He can tell, especially after today, Izuku has impressed him so much. He really has. He's currently looking, well, for a successor for his own Quirk. And as he begins to explain further, Izuku shakes his head, saying that he barely even knows how to use his own Quirk. It wouldn't be a good idea for him to take on another responsibility, something that would allow him to be of greater importance and greater power. He knows that it sounds odd, but he needs to turn it down. He does. That he hopes that All Might finds a greater successor, the best successor he possibly can. And All Might says that that is the goal, that he's going to be heading to UA and to teach over there. So maybe it is good for him to weigh his options. He wants to see who's on the list, who comes into the entrance exam. Maybe he can find somebody of importance for the one for all Quirk. Izuku agrees, telling him that he's sure that he will find somebody, and maybe there's already somebody that is, well, worthy of the Quirk, in fact. Izuku is about to leave, and All Might is about to say his farewells, but All Might says that nonetheless, he wants to help young Midoriya train. His body is flimsy and is not strong, but if he strengthens his body, his Quirk might accelerate with it, and he's seen the potential that he's shown. He's held off a villain of that caliber. He definitely can have massive potential. Izuku is happy to hear this, and he takes on the challenge and the training that All Might would give him, and he goes on to train for the next 10 months with All Might, trying to use his Quirk, and he begins, or throughout this 10 months as well, he begins to build a sort of, well, mannequin of some sorts. One that could replicate the style of a human being, but one that is, in a way, disposable. One that can have weaponry if needed, and so on and so forth. And he begins with the last 2 months of that 10-month training period, he begins to train with that so-called doll. The connection is made with the object far easier than he would with a human being or with a living organism, and Izuku realizes that he was going about this all wrong. The connection needs to be there, and now it is. Izuku begins to move, and as he moves, the puppet moves, and as the puppet moves, he moves. It's as if they're in beautiful and instant sync, but they're not doing the same moves at the same time. Izuku is imagining all this in his brain, thinking about it in his head. He throws the right hand, his puppet goes low for a kick to the stomach. He knows now that there's more to it than just connecting. He can really make them two different beings. As long as Izuku stays focused and doesn't lose that focus, him and his puppets, or whatever is connected to him, will be able to move separately in a way, but in coordination to the fact that he can really expose anybody in terms of fighting. Izuku, during this time of training with All Might, he would begin to look up online different fighting techniques. Of course, he's no master of martial arts, but just learning basic things with having a two-man tandem is definitely beneficial. Izuku would continue to learn these things, and the two-man tandem would feel more fluid, a lot more fluidity to definitely the quirk that he's been using. After the 10 months, All Might is impressed. He tells Izuku that he really has seen insane growth, and even though he doesn't want to take on the responsibility of One for All, he's sure that he's going to find somebody, or of course he might already have found somebody for that quirk instead. Maybe someone that could really take it on and that already has a good grasp on their quirk as well. Of course, Izuku is happy to hear this. He wants someone else to be blessed with the quirk, someone else that maybe is already prepared to take it on. Izuku is now ready for the UA entrance exam. All Might believes so, he believes so, and it's time to go. The UA entrance exam is relatively simple. When he arrives, he begins to walk over and walk to a giant staircase. He sees a couple people that he has no idea who they are, and many who basically kind of look familiar from walking down the streets. People all around Japan are coming to the UA entrance exam in hopes to be the next top hero. UA can get you there, so that's why they are there. He walks in to see that the person he'll be sitting next to is Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo doesn't say a word to him, but eventually would scoff, telling him that he should never have shown up, that just because he was able to save him doesn't mean his quirk is actually usable. Izuku smiles and says that he's been training, working hard. And of course Bakugo says that he's been training too, but of course he's more gifted than Izuku, so he's definitely going to be further past him in this regard. Of course, Izuku doesn't care what Bakugo says. He doesn't mind, and he knows he had the best trainer he possibly could have in All Might, the number one hero. Come on, there's nothing better than that. Of course, Izuku just listens in on present mic as he explains everything to come. He would eventually take his written portion of the UA entrance exam, and he feels like he did it pretty well. He could have cheated. There's various ways, especially with his quirk, that he could cheat, but of course he doesn't want to. He feels he wants to get in on his own merit, and that is something Izuku definitely feels and would feel in canon all the time anyways. Now back in the auditorium, he begins to listen to President Mike as he explains the 1-point robot, 2-point robot, 3-point robot, and so on and so forth, including the 0-point robot, after Tenya Ida spews some nonsense about people being too loud and him forgetting about the 0-point robot when he really didn't. Nonetheless, doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Now, they all head to the gate and wait. And wait. Now this is nerve-wracking for Izuku. He has his puppet next to him, but of course, there were some complications even getting this in. Many argued that this was an outside weapon, so he shouldn't even be allowed to use it. But fortunately for him, he's actually able to use it, and he had already went through all the UA regulations and stuff like that. Eventually, the gates would swing open, and everybody would charge forward to destroy as many robots as possible. But the first robot that Izuku fights, he punches through it with his mannequin / doll that he's using to control, and it shatters to pieces. That's not something Izuku thought of very much, especially when building this thing. He didn't think about it. He punched that robot really hard and it might have left a dent, but this, doll is still made out of weaker material than that metal. So now they have a problem. Izuku just had his only real way of fighting shattered to pieces, but luckily he's able to quickly think on his feet. Controlling one of the robots using the same strategy, he realizes that the robot is just as easy to control. He feels like it's a little more clunky, the limbs aren't actually contorted to the point where it's going to run like a human, but it is relatively quick based on how quick he wants it to move, so he's able to smash through other robots using, well, another robots. He would progressively get the 1-pointer, the 2-pointer, and the 3-pointer. Of course, once he gets the 3-pointer, he holds on to that because it's a little bit stronger, and he begins to smash through robot after robot. He continues to do this and feels that he's picking up speed, and he's actually catching up to a lot of the people around in terms of robot points. This is fantastic. Now he feels like he's definitely going to have a good chance at making it into UA. Before, he kind of had his dream shattered for about 15 seconds when his puppet imploded into nothingness, but it seems like it should work out just fine. He continues to smash through robots, and eventually it would look as if the robots were dwindling heavily. He unfortunately would be forced to rip apart his robot at the last second because he felt like, well, there's nothing else around, he might as well take the points for the robot that he's currently controlling. He does just that, and he begins to basically look for any other robot to control or destroy. When he continues out and he continues walking around, he doesn't see many around. Unluckily enough, it seems that most of them were destroyed, but just as he thinks this, and he begins to feel the ground quaking beneath him. The ground is shaking for a reason. The 0-point robot has arrived, and the 0-point robot is walking towards everyone, and everyone begins to flee, in obviously being completely terrified of a giant robot. They don't want to fight that thing. But as Izuku is leaving, he sees somebody. A girl that is trapped under rubble, a girl that is stuck. Izuku goes sprinting over there and begins to basically reach out his hands. He begins to reach out toward the 0-point robot to get it to stop in its place. And when he reaches out both of his hands, he's eventually able to get it to at least slow down. The 0-point robot now struggling to walk forward. Izuku is struggling to hold this giant behemoth of a robot in place. He continues to hold it, but his hands begin to shake and his fingers begin to bend. It's as if it's breaking his hand. He continues to hold it and asks if the girl can get out on her own. She says that she must have a broken ankle or something, and she can't get out from under the rubble. It's too heavy. Izuku then decides on something that he's not 100% sure is going to work, but he's going to give it a shot anyways. He then holds the 0-point robot with one hand. Obviously, the robot begins to move slightly quicker, and his hand begins to shred as if it's breaking in two. He reaches toward the young girl by the name of Ochako Uraka, and he extends the strings out toward her. As he does this, immediately she begins to seemingly stand up and push the rubble off. It seems as if his puppeteer Quirk allows for, well, people to get stronger at that. He controls puppets or controls inanimate objects, and he enforces strength within them. So if he enforces strength within this girl, it should allow her to break out. He does just that, and since she's already completely restricted, it's not like it's too hard to puppeteer someone like her. In terms of the sludge villain, it was so much more difficult because not only his mass, but also the fact that he was completely coherent entirely. But he's able to basically help her push all the rocks off and allow her to eventually get out from underneath the rocks and away from the danger zone. But Izuku's hand is about to give out. His right hand breaks, and he can feel the pain spike throughout his arm, but he immediately switches to his left hand and tries to hold his ground as the girl gets out of harm's way. As he does this, the 0-point robot begins to walk forward toward him, about to squish him, but he begins to concentrate all of the strings toward that one leg, and as his left hand feels like it's cracking and breaking, he sweeps the leg out from underneath the robot as it goes crashing down on its back. But Izuku collapses to the ground as it feels as if he has two broken arms, and he begins to lay there just not being able to move, exhausted and barely breathing, frankly gasping for air. He then passes out, and eventually he would get the medical care he needs, but when he wakes up, he sees Recovery Girl. Recovery Girl tells him that's, well, he's kind of lucky. These breaks on his hands, luckily they ended up being pretty clean breaks. He's going to be groggy because, well, she used her quirk on him, but he'll be okay overall, and they should heal up relatively soon. She says that was one hell of a display of a quirk. She hasn't seen something like that in a while, and it's definitely impressive. And she hopes that he gets his opportunity to get into UA. Izuku is psyched to hear this, but he's half asleep, and she allows him to leave as long as his mother comes and picks him up, and in which Inko Midoriya does just that. Izuku has a lot of waiting to do, waiting for that letter to arrive. He's in home, resting, of course. After that display of his quirk, he is hurting bad, but luckily he is recovering, and he'll be basically good to go in a matter of a couple days. Eventually, an envelope would come with his name, or addressed to his name. He would open it up, and what would come out of it is something that would make anybody smile. It's a recorder, but not just any recorder. It seems to be a hologram with All Might himself, congratulating Izuku on a job well done. It's impressive. And on top of that, he not only passed and got into class 1A, he was the #1 student, all because of what he did and how he used his quirk to save that girl. Of course, Izuku begins to cry and begins to be extremely happy. But when he starts celebrating a little bit, he can feel his ribs slightly cracking, and he sits back down. His body's still feeling the effect of the overusage of his quirk, so he still needs to take it easy for the next couple of days until he goes to UA. But happiness rushes through Izuku's body, and his mother is excited for him as well. This is an opportunity that he never, in his wildest dreams, would realize he could get. And now he's getting it. Izuku Midoriya has his chance at UA and has his chance to get to where he wants to be. And he wants to be the best hero ever. And that is exactly what UA is going to allow him to accomplish, or at least attempt to accomplish. Find out what happens next on part 2 of What If Deku Had a Puppeteer Quirk. And if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, make sure to leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope y'all enjoyed. I actually really enjoyed this first part, recording it especially. I was kind of locked in while doing it, and I thought it came out pretty good. So, as always, if y'all enjoyed, I hope y'all enjoyed, of course. I hope y'all leave a like, all that stuff. And I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.